Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of The Gavel, featuring attorney Ana Toledo. Ms. Toledo is the senior attorney and general counsel to Targeted Justice. She has a background in constitutional and environmental law and is an experienced litigator, including 2 cases at the U.S. Supreme Court. And here's Ms. Toledo.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here with me today in this weekly recap of the events that are so important to our targeted community. Before going into the really great news that have happened this week, I just want to read a little excerpt from John chapter 8 and chapter 12, because I want this space to be blessed and to have the people in the right mind and with their heart in the right place. And so it reads like this. Jesus spoke to them again. I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. Those who follow Christ in truth may stumble into darkness, but they will never perpetually walk in it. Amen. And that's exactly what many of us in this community have gone through. We have gone through horribly dark places, but now we're starting to see the light. And that's what I'm here for, to provide you with the information that confirms that, in fact, good things are happening and that freedom is being seen as a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to start with a huge piece of news that has been happening for the past 2 days. And I actually wrote today a Substack about it, and I urge you all to look at it, because even though I'm going to discuss it here, you should very carefully read it because its implications are huge. So last week I had mentioned that it seems that the information that is going to lead to our freedom is being revealed in a drip, little by little. I think that it's going to be so huge and so shocking that by the time they expose everything, they will have exposed little bits of it. And that's what happened last week when Ms. Tulsi Gabbard exposed, declassified the documents that stated that during the Biden administration, people that were associated as Trump supporter, MAGA supporters, against mask mandates, against vaccine mandates, and against lockdowns, all that universe of people were placed and classified as domestic violent extremists. You can't hear anything on YouTube. Angel, okay. It says it's there. Try to go to Rumble. Thanks for letting me know. Does everybody, please, is everybody else hearing me? Facebook, Twitter? You can now. Okay, thank you, Angel. Okay, so we had that huge development last week, and this week it gets even better, because reporter Margot Cleveland from The Federalist exposed a document that Senator Chuck Grassley made public, and it was an electronic communication that had to do with the Crossfire hurricane investigation and the Steele dossier and all those FISA warrants that were obtained, the Russian collusion hoax. Thank you, Dory. I don't know very much about Senator Grassley's legacy, but this will undoubtedly be one of his most important contributions to freedom and democracy, because he has exposed an electronic communication from the FBI. And I'm gonna read, because I don't want to say anything that is not accurate. So it says that within the FBI's electronic case management system, which is called the Sentinel, there is a database categorized as prohibited access that allows agents to hide the existence of relevant investigative reports from other authorized users of the federal database. According to an electronic communication from the Washington FBI field office dated this September of 2019. The Sentinel system includes invisible files. You heard that right. Invisible files that can't just not be read, and you don't even know that they exist. So if they are in the prohibited access files and you do a search, the search will not turn up any results. Contrary to the restricted access, which says, well, there are 15 files in the restricted access, but you cannot access it. Remember, many of us sent Privacy Act requests and FOIA requests to the FBI, and they denied having any information. And they also said, we do not deny or confirm. And the reason is because it is likely, and I'm going to explain why in a little while, all of our files are probably in that prohibited access subcategory within the Sentinel. So when we do a FOIA, it's supposedly every document that arrives, or every piece of evidence, or every piece of information that arrives to the FBI is entered into this Sentinel. So this is how they supposedly do the searches when you do a FOIA request, right? But if it is in this prohibited access, it will never show up. When Sentinel users carry out a search, if there is a positive access hit in the prohibited database, it will not show. Okay, so according to that electronic communication, the invisible files that cannot be read and you don't know that exist are not to be confused with the restricted access files, which I mentioned. They might tell you, well, there's 10, there's 15 in the restricted access, but people that work at the FOIA office might not have the security clearance to access them. So here is the thing. Most of us that are in the two secret categories of the terrorist screening database, most of us have no business being in any Sentinel database because we have not committed any federal crimes. So there is no reason for our information to be included in the Sentinel file. The reason why our files must be under the prohibited access is because, as many of you know, the Unacknowledged Special Access Program, where the victims of government weaponization have been placed in, is at a security clearance level number 35. Most FBI agents don't have that level of security clearance. And what is really interesting in this context is the following. As you know, there have been, I believe, around 300 federal employees that have been covered by the Havana Act of 2021 because the federal government, the Congress, and senators refuse to acknowledge that there are civilian victims, even though the same doctor, Dr. Michael Hoffer, that diagnosed the federal employees, has diagnosed civilians as well, but they have never bothered to ask him how many civilians he has diagnosed with Havana syndrome. But that's an aside. The important thing is that the FBI agents that have been diagnosed with Havana syndrome have clearly been attacked with electromagnetic weapons, just as you and me. These people don't have access to those hidden files, to those prohibited files, and thus they could not make the connection that they were placed on the two secret categories of the terrorist screening database and that they are targeted individuals. And this is huge for his legal representation, who at some point had a security clearance, because that is why they could not connect the dots. Federal FBI employees that had access to the Sentinel database could not discover that their names, that they are targeted individuals, and that the information regarding, for example, the nomination form that each targeted individual has must be on those files that are classified as prohibited access files, because you need a security clearance of 35 or higher in order to access them. Fortunately, Ed Martin, the district he had been named as DC district attorney, and now he's working as deputy attorney general. He's working on the pardons. He is evaluating that the pardons were granted with the auto-pen. He's also working. He's a real patriot. He's also working with the government weaponization, the elimination of government weaponization, and he brought this problem of the prohibited access files brings in a huge problem that also relates to the people in our targeted community, and it is this: under people that are accused of crimes, they have a constitutional right to obtain what are called the Brady files. And these Brady files contain exculpatory evidence. And what Mr. Ed Martin has been stating is that the implications of these prohibited access files is huge, because special agents carrying out their work, their labor of producing Brady files to defendants did not produce anything on these prohibited access files because they didn't even know existed. Now, in the context of targeted individuals, this is hugely important. Why? Because we know that many people in our community have been entrapped into either committing crimes or into being accused of crimes they did not commit. So the non-production of their nomination form and all the information regarding their targeting that is in those prohibited access files totally obliterates their constitutional right to defend themselves. And this, I have been talking about this since last year, about the right to discovery within the FBI files of your nomination form and your targeting information. So this is going to open a huge Pandora's box in terms of people that have been convicted, and that the Brady materials hidden in these prohibited access files has not been produced. So the implications in other civil matters are huge. Most importantly, in our this is the name of the journalist in our Privacy Act request. This is Margot Cleveland. Please follow her on social media, because she's the one that is unraveling this whole scandal of the hidden files. This is the most un-American thing there is. This is where, this is like out of a dictatorship and a Stasi state. So she is unveiling, and it is important that she realizes probably the creation of this prohibited access. And hear me well, I believe the reason that the FBI created this prohibited access category is precisely to deal with the hundreds of thousands of targeted individuals that have no business in the Sentinel system because they have not committed any crimes. And they had to hide our information so that when we filed FOIA requests, they could deny them. This is as Machiavellic and malevolous as it gets. This denotes planning, deliberate planning to hide information from innocent Americans that were illegally targeted. We need to get to the bottom of who created this prohibited access category, under whose instructions. I am sure that Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray are behind it. And we need to demand that the information is unveiled, right? So let me show you the definition. There you have the definition of the prohibited access documents. It's just completely, it's so outrageous. And maybe this is why Mr. Bongino a couple of days ago said in a post on X that they had found a room full of hidden evidence. But I think he was probably talking in a figurative sense. And instead of a physical room, he was talking about these prohibited access documents. Now, I have adapted our new, many of you had asked for the Privacy Act FOIA request. And what I did is that not only did I update it, it's in when you go to how to fight back in targetedjustice.com, it's the last document. It's the last document, which is the FOIA sample letter. And what I did was that I added to it the following. I added to the letter, to the sample letter, I say, I specifically request. You have to put your information, okay? You have to be very accurate with your information so they don't say, oh, I couldn't find anything. Put all your aliases, your names, etc. And I specifically say, I specifically request that you include in your search the restricted files and the prohibited access files. So they are going to have to get somebody with a security clearance of 35 to look into those files, or just completely open them to the agents that are working on the FOIA office. We have the good news, as I mentioned last week, that Mr. Michael Seidel, whom the Gateway Pundit has deemed as the face of FBI corruption, hiding information, seems to have either retired or been relocated somewhere else, but he's no longer the chief of that office. And that's good news, because the people that were under him, even if they're following his instructions, they need to know that the current government wants transparency, that Mr. Patel and Ms. Bondi and Ms. Dillon and everybody in the DOJ is demanding transparency from them, so they can no longer continue hiding their crimes. If they did something wrong, it's time for whistleblowers to come forth and tell the truth of what they did. So again, the link for this letter, the link is in targetedjustice.com, how to fight back. And in there, you also have the letter to Mr. Patel, which one of the reasons why I think it is so important for us right now is that if you send your letter, at the very least, when they reply to your Privacy Act request, they have to produce it. They have to acknowledge its existence. They can't just destroy it. That is just one of the reasons why I am insisting that you send your letter through priority mail and send us. I have at least 20 people have responded in T-Justice 2, sending me the tracking number. So if you could be so kind, please send me evidence that you sent it, because the more evidence we have, the harder it is to just for them to brush it under the rug, to sweep it under the rug. So I hope that you can adapt also the FOIA letter and send it after you send your letter to Mr. Patel. I was very detailed in the information sought, because as a targeted individual, we know that these people have a nomination form. They have confidential human sources reports. They have recordings of all the calls that they have interfered with using the mechanism of FISA 702. I believe you have a right to have the affidavits, and this is something that we could talk about in the future for potential litigation, and it is this: you have a right. Article 3 warrants, court warrants, after they are executed, you have a right to get them. So I propose that, let's say, a warrant that expired on December 2024, which was already used and discarded, well, you have a right to know that the FISA court issued a warrant against you. So this is where the FBI criminals hid all of your FISA warrants, your nomination form, the reports on the people spying on you, probably the reports on the documents stolen from your house. This is why this prohibited access category, I am absolutely certain, was created for this program, which we're bringing down. So just read that. I think Targeted Justice reposted it too. And I cannot emphasize enough the importance that you get very acquainted with this language, because when we go in Targeted Action 2025 and you go speak to your Congress representative or your senator, you need to speak this language fluently, not just about Havana syndrome and non-kinetic brain injury, but also about the Unacknowledged Special Access Program and how it has obliterated the rights of innocent Americans. And by innocent Americans, I also include those people that have been entrapped into crimes. Do not think, and there's a lot of people in prison that are horrifically tortured. Do not think that for a second that we're leaving them behind, just as we're not leaving behind anybody from outside of the United States. But you need to understand that a war is won winning small battles. And we are first fighting the battle of all of those law-abiding citizens that have been victims of government weaponization. I propose to all of you, and you decide whether you accept it or not, that let's start shifting the language of targeted individual into victim of government weaponization, or law-abiding citizens victim of government weaponization, because the weaponization of the government has exclusively been directed at the people in handling codes 3 and 4. Those are the victims of government weaponization. And evidence of it, for example, when the Twitter file scandals erupted, that I wish Mr. Matt Taibbi published a list of the people that the then Twitter company allowed 80 FBI agents to spy and censor their content. He explained that these people were not influencers or really like high number accounts. And I am absolutely certain that those 80 FBI agents were spying on targeted individuals, on victims of government weaponization. That is why we need to insist not only that the names of those 80 agents working with the censorship of our free speech be revealed, but also whose accounts were the ones that were being monitored by these 80 agents that turned their back on the Constitution and on the rights of innocent Americans just for their political or deep state reasons. Now, I'm going to cover, I have a little time. I promised I was going to keep this down to half hour because I just want you to have, boom, a burst of important news that are going to fuel our energy to keep on going and to keep on fighting these criminals. So this was just on the internet today, with just a single phone call, somebody was removed from the quiet skies. A U.S. senator's spouse, she's a Democrat, was placed on a government watch list in 2023 after a surveillance program flagged his travel profile because he's Lebanese. So then, shortly after, New Hampshire Democrat Gene Shaheen spoke with TSA. His name was removed from the TSA, but his name was placed, and this was from the news, was placed on a different list. Guess what list was that? Yeah, we know what list that was because handling codes 3 and 4 are like the Hotel California. You check in, but you can never check out, and they know it. And that's what we are fighting for. So the episode took place in a heightened security environment in October 2023, days after the Hamas attacked Israel and killed more than 1,200 people. I don't know if this is true or not. I'm just reading from CBS. That's, as you know, it's legacy media, so I don't know how accurate that reporting is. But what it is accurate is that they said that they took him off the quiet skies and put him in another list. So we know what that list is. And so for those of you that are in New Hampshire, you should write to Jean Shaheen and explained to her the other list that they placed her husband in. New Hampshire is supposed to be the state of the free. They don't even have taxes there. Okay, so that is something that tends to show that everything, the layers of the onion are being peeled off, and this is no time to back off. This is a time for the digital warriors to get really active and be very respectful, be very intelligent. You can copy and repost a lot of information from Targeted Justice newsletter or from my Meta newsletter. I urge you to subscribe. It's free. Both are free. If you want to become a paid subscriber, we're more than welcome it. But the importance is that you are an informed community, that you note that speaking properly about the program and about the civil rights violations and constitutional violations will give us the credibility that we need to pierce the veil of secrecy. Unless the community gets really educated on this, on all the facts surrounding this, and I'm just going to give you a little advice, and this is off the news, and it's on my personal level, and it is that do not obsess with reading about, I know I've said this before, but I have to reiterate it, about your digital twin, or your brain has been uploaded to the cloud, or your brain has been hacked, because that doesn't make you grow. That doesn't make you have peace. And if that is true, there is nothing you can do about it other than shutting down the program. So let's concentrate on the information and putting out the information to as many people that are not in the program as possible about those things that can be corroborated, such as Havana syndrome. They were returned, Jean. I don't know why the letters were returned, but you should go to your post office and ask why. Because I have said many times, and in the Targeted Justice newsletter X account, there is an article how the postal workers who comprise 2% of the fusion centers, you and I know that they many times steal mail that doesn't get to the destination. That's why you can't pay your bills on time, because they hide it or put it in your mailbox with like two, the corner is sticking out, so anybody can just steal your mail. And so I have the poorest opinion possible of the United States Postal Service. I think that many of the workers there collude with this program, and I have asked through social media to Mr. Ed Martin to investigate them, because they are clearly colluding with this program. So, Jean, I really urge you to send it not certified, but with priority mail, which is how mine got delivered. And send it, because we need after we send these, they cannot deny us our Privacy Act request, particularly when we're demanding that they look in those prohibited access categories, because that is where our information is. I urge you to share this episode with people that need to understand that the second-class citizenship that the victims of government weaponization have been subjected to has got to end. Share it with anybody and everybody in power that can make a difference about it. I have proof they've manipulated mail. Yes, we all know that, and we have documented it. Targeted Justice has filed at least 2 complaints with the Postmaster General, who of course doesn't do anything because he just protects these people that are lawless. However, for those of you that have a little legal background, you might want to check the case Conan versus U.S. Postal Service. Is a Fifth Circuit case where the Fifth Circuit agreed that the plaintiff, Mrs. Conan, who had her mail stolen by the letter carriers, she could proceed under the Federal Tort Claim Act against those 2 postal workers. Look up that case, KONAN, and start sending your letters to your post office that delivers your mail and tell them, I will be suing my mail carriers if you continue doing this criminality of stealing my mail. It's a crime and they are not above the law. If any civilian stole the mail in your mailbox, they would be accused with a felony, a federal crime. How is it possible that these letter carriers can go around doing whatever they want and not be punished for it? And there is a trace. So I urge you all to read that case and write your little letter to all my packages come with holes too. They try to break everything. That's why you need to super duper package everything in lots of air bubbles. But okay, I'm going to say goodbye now because I don't want to take any more of your time. I think these are great news coupled with what happened last week. I am absolutely certain that this is being exposed. And fortunately, I urge you to follow not only this journalist, Margot Cleveland. Please follow her on X if you're on X. And I don't know if it's Truth Social, but follow her because she is, I even put in there in reply to one of her posts, I said, the reason is, and I put the 35 levels of security clearance because many people have no clue. Why would the FBI create this prohibited access? Because they are doing illegal things like putting innocent people on an authorized terrorist list that is not for terrorists because they are allowed to travel and move around because they have no reasonable suspicion, no probable cause, and they are not a threat to national security. Please be very vocal about this because this is what we have to hammer for everybody to just, so it becomes, when it's all exposed, it's like, yeah, we knew that was happening. Okay, so thank you everybody, and I hope to see you next week. Please subscribe, like and subscribe so that I can you get the notifications when I go online next week with the, I hope, really great breakthroughs that are going to happen this week. Have a safe week.